Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman. On the stream this evening, we're going to work on our continuation of migrating a service that I have, software as a service, from Heroku to DigitalOcean. We've been on that journey last week, and we did some major steps last week, but we're going to continue on that path and go through this checklist. I've kind of ordered these in the order that I think that they need to be done, so we'll just keep marching through them. So first things first, let's get to the code and take a look at where we are. We currently have a setup where we're using this Django environment project, and we can see that in the PyProject TOML file. We have our list of dependencies that we're using, and we're using Django environment here. And I want to switch to environs, which is an alternate tool for managing environment configuration. Still environment variables ultimately, but it's a simpler setup in my opinion. And it has some benefits that I hope to show off here. So let's have the homeschool app up as a side project as a reference point. So it's my other app that I'm using. But we can use that to kind of act as a guide when there's any questions about what's going on, because I've already done this migration for this other app. So we will start from by adding environs first to our project here. And actually, even before that, what I want to do is rename this variable. So I'm going to use the refactoring tool, and we'll call this old environment. It's not Wednesday. Yeah, Jeffrey, welcome. I switched my streaming day to Thursday. I had a bunch of conflicts with Wednesday with like local meetup events that I was doing, so I was missing like half of the times where I could stream. So I've moved to Thursday officially. But welcome anyway. So we have the need to add environs to our projects. We're using UV for dependency management. So this should be as simple as UV add environs is the name of the project. And then we can see from our diff that we've added that one, and it's added just one package. And well, that's not true. It's got some other dependencies here on .env and marshmallow. Marshmallow is, I guess, where it gets its serialization capabilities. Yes, John, that's one of my refactoring tools. I took that straight from an LSP command. So nothing fancy there, unless if you're a good reason to use a language server protocol to do environment renaming and stuff. And so now we can see we've got environments here. So we're going to add, and I actually will need to restart the LSP because it doesn't know about this new package that we just added. But we're going to do an import to environs. That's the only difference is there's a bunch of differences, but the only import difference name is the one at the top. So what I'm going to be doing here is kind of taking each one of these variables and finding where it exists in this file, and then replace it with the alternative that works for this new setup. So we want to start with we're going to name this thing env, just like it's over here. And so it's an environs object. It's an env object just like the other. And similarly, it's got that read env thing. We don't need to pass it any parameters this time. We can just do env read env, and that should do everything that we need to simulate the same reading of dot files. So that's why we have this present here. Although with Django environment, you had to be more explicit and say, hey, here's where I expect to find the env file. This tool just figures it out, which is cool. So we will go through these one at a time and go through every instance of old env and make sure that we're covering this. So the challenge here is twofold. We need to make sure that we've got our defaults captured as well, and the type. So that's one of the benefits of this new tool is actually, so let's do this as an example. So we've got this first one, account default HTTP protocol that has a string type and HTTPS. So we'll go and find this, and we'll replicate it and change it to the new one. So the new way to do this is end, and then you give the type that you want this to be, and then the default goes after as the second parameter. So that's all that we have to do for this to make this change. But what I like about this is that you don't have to be jumping between the top of the file and where it actually is used in order to see what is the parameter that you have. So that's really cool. And a frankly the biggest reason why I want to switch over to it. The other tool is fine, but I grew tired of being like, what was the default variable for this again? So this is in my opinion, a much nicer way to localize both type and default information. All right, so we're done with that. So let's delete this. Let's go back to the top, and we're done with that. We'll just keep moving down the list. So the next one is allowed hosts, and this is going to be the same way. We will do env.list, and then the default is going to be an empty list. I actually don't know if we need that to be the default. Let's look at the other project and see. Yeah, I use that as the empty list. So it's like if you're, it's a way of saying this is not required, which then Django will treat that differently for local development. So that's what that one's about. So we can delete that and march through this. So the next one is our CSF's cookie secure. It's a Boolean that defaults to true. So let's do this. Change that to env bool and default it to true. All right, so another one down. This shouldn't take terribly long, hopefully, as you'll see. And then once we're done with that, there are probably some that are required that don't have a default. And for those, we'll just switch from old env to env, and then we'll be done with it. And then cleanup will be removing the old package and making sure the tests still run as we expect them to. Okay, so next we've got this config, which frankly we're not even going to need long term, but we'll keep it for now. Well, we do have to use it for our migration, so that's not true. So we want to change this to, this will be env.int, and that will be 600, and it's complaining because I've got this as a dictionary. It figures that out. So there's that one there. And sorry, this is not the most exciting things. This is what comes with migration. You just got to be thorough about stuff. So this is a bool with true, and we'll do env bool and give it true, and we'll keep marching. Then we've got debug to false. So another env bool. We want this to be default to false. Get rid of the old one. Okay, and then our debug toolbar is the same. So I don't even know why I'm copying these, but whatever, it's fine. Bool and default to false. Okay. Whoops, that one had multiple instances. Okay, then we've got email backend. This one's a longer string, so I'm probably gonna have to come back up to that to get that string because I don't want to type that incorrectly. So we'll change this to env string. We will go back to the top. Whoops, no, that's not what I want to do. I want to go ahead and give it a place to land, just because that's easier with my Vim configuration. We yank inside the quotes there, go back to the other one, and then we can paste there. Okay, and that's email backend. Okay, we've got secure HSTS seconds. This is it's for HSTS. It's a header. It's basically forcing your browser to go into secure mode. But that's what it is, and then it's set up for 365 days, but in seconds. So that's why it's got 60, 60, 24, 65. Am I sure the bool values aren't lowercase? Let's see. I have some here. So like the bool values here are actual bools in Python. So then when you're doing the actual like environment variable, I believe it accepts either. I think I even tried it, whether you use like capital T or lowercase t for true. That was my experience. And in fact, it might have even been one of these things where it also continued to accept like on or off as acceptable values, or 1 or 0, those kind of things. I think all of them get kind of coerced into being a Boolean value. So secure HSTS seconds is an int. So let's change this to an int this time. I'll just change it in place now, and we'll do int, and then the default value is going to be 60 times 60 times 24 times 365 for 1 year. Okay. And secure SSL redirect. I think this is one that we're going to have to ultimately change, but we don't need to change it today. It's when Kamal had a different proxy setting where basically I needed to with my other project force some setting in order to get certain configuration working with the proxy. But I don't know that we'll get to that today. But for now, we'll just use it as is. It was env.bool and a value of true. And then Sentry enabled is another bool, env bool, and we want to default it to true. And that's that one. And then the session cookie secure, env bool for a value of true. Okay, almost there. And Stripe live mode is env bool with a value of true. Oh, there's two of them. Why are there two of them? Huh? Why do I have two of them? That's a mistake. I don't think we need two of them. Get out of here. Okay. So that gets rid of old env. I don't want to delete this yet because there are other instances, or maybe I should because it'll give us a place to jump to for a quick list. So we can delete that and then delete all this stuff, and that gets rid of environ. And then we can just start jumping to the diagnostics that are broken, and we can switch these to env. There's no default like that's going to force a value here. So all we have to do is actually find all instances of old env and rename them. Oh, nothing to rename. Okay. Because it's not a valid token anymore, my editor tools can't find it. It's okay. So env, it's fine. We'll just march through these. Almost there. I think that's it. Okay, let's run the tests. See that everything still works. See I didn't mess anything up. All good. And then finally, we can do UV remove Django environ, which should take out the other version, the other package. So if we look at the bottom where our changes are, we can see Django environment is no longer there. Where is the PyProject toml? Is it like between this stuff? PyProject. There it is. Okay. All right. So we see the change. Cool. So that's all there's to that. Not a particularly difficult one. And the nice part is we have the confidence that, like, of a really well-covered test suite to be confident that we did everything the way it's supposed to do, that everything's still running. I guess it's one last sanity check. Let's run Honcho and make sure nothing is blowing up in our face here. So we can run the app and go over to port 8000. And hopefully, ooh, that doesn't look right. That does not look right. What do we do? I don't think this is related to our change that we just did. I think it is like some problem with static files here. What? So the site CSS file loaded. Okay, well, I'm not going to worry about that at the moment. I'm going to plow ahead, and then this will be something that we have to validate before we actually deploy. Something clearly has gone wrong with the files here, and I think I still have disable cache on, so it should have gotten whatever's the latest file. So I guess maybe I didn't validate. Well, okay. Let's commit this change and then fix whatever's going on here, because this is not a good place to be in. I don't want to get too far and make too many changes and then wondering what the thing was that I messed up. So let's do, what number is this issue? It's 239. And we'll say that we did that once we move here. Switch from Django environ to environs for 239. I don't want to close this, so I'm just saying it's for this number. That's not anything special on GitHub's part. I'm just making this. So I could have just put 239. That would have been enough. But I like to have a little bit of English in there, I suppose. All right, let's go back and figure out what did I mess up with the main site here, because something ain't right. I bet I know what it is. I bet they can't find the templates, and so I bet it's creating a real site CSS file, but it's like empty, or practically empty. So we've got this here. We refresh. None of that's going. So if we actually, let's start to inspect this. So we've got MB8. And notice, well, maybe you can't. It's kind of like buried behind my head. Let me see if I can move this way over. There we go. Notice that MB8 is nowhere to be found. So what that tells me is that Tailwind ran. Tailwind ran, but then it didn't find the right directory. I think I know what the problem is. So there's a Tailwind configuration file, and it's looking for the templates here, but this path. So this file I think was one of the files that we moved from the top level directory, if I recall correctly. And so it's looking in this front-end directory, and there's no templates directory here. So it doesn't know where that is. So I think if we just switch it to look up a directory and then restart this, then Tailwind's gonna find everything at this point and write out the static file at the right location. All right, there we go. Simple fix. Nice. So let's go ahead and commit that too as its own separate change. Say fix Tailwind config. This is all for the 239. Okay, what's next for us here? Yes. One of the things with Kamal, and as a reminder, in case you haven't joined before, Kamal is this tool that we'll actually be using to deploy the site from. Instead of Heroku gives you a bunch of tools to actually do deployment, makes deployment easy. Kamal is also easy, but it's another tool that we'll have to configure because I'm now taking over that responsibility myself by deploying to DigitalOcean. But Kamal's pretty nice. But one of it's got some requirements and some expectations about what your app does. And one of those expectations is that you have to have a health check, some kind of endpoint or just URL path that Kamal can check. And it does that because every time it is trying to start your new version of your container, the container starts up, but there's a period of time where the container is not ready yet. So it will only start serving traffic to it as soon as the health check is passed, which is basically a valid response from the container. So what we need to do with the app is actually give it some kind of health check that we can use. And so what I'm going to do is we have a core app here, and I'm going to use the same exact health check that I used in the homeschool app. So we'll come over here, and we'll also come over to the core apps here. And you can see I called it a very simplistic name. This is, we did, cool. I forgot that we'd migrated JourneyInbox to use Django denied, which is good. So that's the same scheme. So I can like straight up copy this code. So we view all this code and we copy it into the paste buffer. And then we've got this new endpoint that we'll do. I guess we can just put it at the bottom. It's fine. So paste it here. And This code's actually broken right now because we don't have a template. Let's actually go prove that to ourselves. So core test views, and then we will copy the privacy policy test and do test up. And it is designed to be not require any authentication. That's good. So this is still good enough. We also have not wired up a URL route, so that's something else we need to do. So here we have the URL for this, and I just called it up. Something I am changing about my apps is I'm gonna stop using trailing slashes. I just realized like I don't care about that. Like it's a strong Django culture convention, but the more I looked at it, I'm like, why does that matter? So we're just gonna call ours up. I'm gonna take the same thing, and I think maybe the difference is I don't know that this particular Django app has a URLs. I think all this stuff is wired in the project URLs file. So let's go over there, and we can put it. Let's just put it at the top here. So this will give us a new path. It will be we want to do put this here, and it auto clean that up, and then we will delete that, and cool. So that's all good. Now the other thing we need to go down here to is just call this up. So this should fail, and good. It fails exactly the way we would expect it to. So the other thing we need to do is go to the core Jeffrey, good question. I don't have a strong reason for I think where I was coming from, at least initially, was keeping a simpler point of view on the app. Like this app is not going to have a lot of routes. So I kind of wanted to say, let's just put them all in one place for a while until I'm convinced otherwise. That's not entirely true. Like I do have some that are, we've got some third-party things here, but I'm opting for let me feel the pressure of feeling cluttered before I move away from having like a simple place to have everything. I don't know if that's valid or not. Like I don't know if that's reasonable, but that's just where I was with this project, and that's what I stuck with. So you can decide if you like that or not. So I've got this very simple HTML template. That's all it's going to respond with this view. So that's what we're rendering here. If we actually so we can load this up. In fact, now that this is running, we can go and we can check out localhost up, and it's just a nice green color. So technically, after I deploy this, anybody could check the public endpoint and you could see up. Like there's a future where maybe I'd want to use this as a reporting thing of I could check this, and if it was red, I might, or like I could put in other static information or dynamic information. I'm kind of I'm not sure about if I want more in there, because there's like if you ever study Kubernetes, I don't know why you would unless you have more complicated needs, but that orchestration tool has a variety of, it's not like they've got let's see, what do they call it, liveness. Yeah, so there's different kinds of checks, like different kinds of health checks. So one is called a liveness probe and one is a readiness probe. I can never remember exactly which one is which. I think liveness is just like what I have as the up thing right now, where will you respond at all? And then readiness might be like if everything is ready to communicate. It's a very subtle nuance. I don't really care. Also, Kamal doesn't care, so I'm not going to worry about it. So I could put more stuff in here and let Kamal deal with that, but I'm not going to right now. This actually did bite me initially with my other project. So when I deployed my app on DigitalOcean, I immediately hit a failure. Thankfully, I had Sentry configured, so it reported it. But what I had done is I had done all this migration where I moved the Postgres data to SQLite. And then what I did is I did like a final deploy, and I'm like, oh, I'm done, right? Everything's ready. And first thing that did was it failed on me. And what I realized is that I'd still left the Django database URL configuration up. and there was no URL set because I'm I'll show this later, using some files that were like on the machine, and paying more attention to a directory instead of like a database URL config. And so it blew up on me and said, like, you don't have a database. And it only blew up on me once I hit a route that actually needed to use the database. So the app was able to come up because this particular up view is not trying to do anything with the database. So that was a weak point of this particular up thing, but it's good enough, I think. Anyway, that's what's going on there. So we now have a template. We now have a route. We can go to the same back to here, and we should get a passing test. So you pull out the test, Jeff. Oh, John, look, sorry, it's in your comment here. Pull out the tests and templates from the apps and centralize. John, I'm curious about what you pull out. Let me make sure I'm reading this right. You pull out the tests and templates from the apps. Your tests? You write your tests separate from your app, so you don't. If I'm reading you right, like you don't have this structure where you have a test directory in your app. That's interesting. Yeah, it is totally just it's how you get used to it. I totally agree with that sentiment. And one person's awesome as another person's like, what? Are you crazy? I'm not saying you're crazy, John. I'm just like reacting to each of us have our own perspective on our own personal taste. All right. So I think though, where does that leave this? Everything should be covered. So, man, I have another project where I call it Make CI and one called Make Coverage. I have seen the single file Django talk before, or was it a full talk or like a lightning talk? I can't remember. I know Carlton. I think it was Carlton Gibson who did that. I do wish that Django was a little bit more like approachable from the first get-go. And I think I kind of aired out my feelings on X, and actually the official Django project kind of said, what are you going to do about it? I'm like, well, you know, what am I going to do about it? I do a lot of other stuff for Django. I don't have to write all the code. I was really praising Rails, actually. So Rails 8 came out. Ruby on Rails. So Ruby on Rails 8. And it's got some awesome stuff in it. And so to the point where I'm saying, like, or what I was trying to say on X was, hey, this stuff's really cool. There are some things here that would make for a really awesome setup. And if you could get farther with like the out of the box setup, that would be great. Like, imagine, you know, the thing that came, actually, I even went so far. So here's where my brain was going with this. I'm like, they kind of nerd sniped me, but a little bit, but I held back in the end. They being whoever was running the Django project X account. So I started this project that I haven't finished by a long shot. It was really just an idea. And the idea was this, like currently, if you want to start a new Django app, you have to do, so you install, you like do pip install or UV install, whatever, like Django. Okay, fine. And then that gives you access to, once you've done that, to the Django admin command. So in this case, it would be UV run Django admin, but you get the idea. So it's one of these commands. And then, so like what you're told to do from there, and if you're following tutorials and stuff, is you have to start with doing a start project. And then you give it like some parameters, and those get confusing, and you probably want the dot after, but you don't know that unless you've done it a couple times. So that's one setup. And then after you do the start project thing, then you're supposed to do UV run manage. So you start with, it's going to generate a manage.py file, and then you're supposed to do start app to create your own app as the first place to put your views and stuff. And I've come to the point where I'm like, this drives me bonkers. Like, why are you walking people through, like, immediately, if your first exposure to Django is you have to learn about this thing called projects, and then you have to understand this thing called apps. Like, it's confusing to me. So what I really want is, okay, you can't get away from the fact that you need to install Django. So do that. But you know, it would be really nice if you could do Django run, whatever your way to get Django admin like this, and then do start. Not start app, not start project, just start. And then you could do that, and it would do a template that gives you a project and an app and puts them together, because you're going to need both anyway. So why separate them? So the nerd snipe idea I had was, well, is it possible with a package to install files into another package? So here's where I was kind of going with this idea of Django start. And the reason that I didn't hyphenate this is because the pip name is already taken. And if you, I guess somebody could steal this name on PyPI, that's fine. But where I was hoping to go was something like, first do pip install Django start. That's what I was going to say. And then your second command would be Django admin start. What I was hoping to do was like get around the fact that like make a new command that could have a nicer user interface, like text user interface, and be plugged in directly to the Django admin tooling. And the way I was going to work that is, let me show you what I was thinking of. So if I run Django admin H, you see like these are the built-in Django commands. And my hope, the wild hair idea I had was like, could I add a new built-in, or make it look like it's a built-in command, so that there'd be start app and start project. And where I was going with that is what I was going to do in the source directory of this thing that I was going to install was follow the same directory structure. Like the Django app itself, or Django repo itself, is well formed, right? So I could go, and in that structure, I could go to where is it? Management. Like these things are well named, right? Because that's Django's discovery mechanism. So Django for management, and here are all the commands. So if I created in my own package the same package name of Django core and management, and maybe didn't give them the init files and nothing like that. There's a name for this. It's a different kind of package, a namespace package. What does Python call it? Where you don't have the init files, and essentially like virtually just plug in my own file right on somebody else's right into the Django directory. Then the effect would be like a simple thing where you could have your own template in here. I don't know. And my whole reason for that is like, I didn't want to go through the rigmarole of going through the official Django processes and community, and I wanted it to be more of an experiment of, say, like, what if we just had a simpler start sequence where we make some very opinionated decisions on behalf of the user who may not know anything yet, and just like Rails 8, bring them a very versatile, robust setup. Like a big selling point of Django is batteries included, right? And Rails is like the Ruby cousin to Django, but in a different language ecosystem. So yeah, that's where I was going with that. I didn't end up doing it because I've got too many other things in my life, like showing Django on YouTube streaming. So I'm not going to get nerd sniped by the Django project into doing more than I already necessarily do. But that's what my thought was. But it was kind of frankly, it was a little frustrating, if I'm truthful about it. Anyway, so we've got a new endpoint. We've got a new health check, and it seems to be working. Did I run the tests? Make coverage? Can't remember. So let's run that. Make sure it's 100% coverage. It should be. We added a test case for it. I didn't need to do that. Coverage is running with migrations. That's for CI. This is slower. Sorry. Okay, still 100% coverage. So we'll say add health check endpoint. And this is again for number 239. So that's that next piece. So let's keep plugging away. All right, here was the first area where Kamal, the tool I want to switch to, did not serve what I needed. Now let me explain why, and then we'll switch to actually start using Huey, which should be a pretty easy change, frankly. So here's Kamal. You can go watch. This is David Hennemeyer Hansen, who's the guy behind Ruby on Rails. He also is the guy behind Kamal, and he shows how it actually works. But if we jump to the documentation and you go into the configuration section, you can look through this list and you say like, oh, cron. Now, if you followed any amount of this stream, well, a particular amount, I suppose. The way that my current setup on Heroku is working is we're using the Heroku scheduler, which effectively is a cron service, and it runs cron jobs. And the way that they charge out of that is like you can run as many cron jobs as you want, and the actual like machine that's running, you get charged while it's running. So it's like pennies, super cheap. That's not the expensive part of Heroku. The expensive part is the database and having other stuff up. But I thought I first encountered Kamal and I'm like, oh great, I can just migrate my same setup over and I can use their cron setup here, which looks like this. And I tried this and it failed. So what it failed on is security stuff. Security, bane of my existence. So if we look at the Docker file that we built last week, the important element of it is this. Whoa, jump right to it. This line right here. So we've got this user app. So we're effectively telling the Docker image. So we're going through all this stuff, and we set up this user. And then at the very end, after we've done all the work to configure everything, we say run the app, or sorry, run the process, this command, as the app user. And this is where cron just like goes off the rails. So what happens with this kind of setup is that cron really, or it might have been specifically, I think it was specifically cron tab. Can't remember. So like what they're essentially suggesting is put a cron file of all of the things you want to run into a cron tab file. Okay, no problem. And then pipe that directly into cron using standard in as the input for it. And that's going to run it. And then run cron in the foreground. So cron tab is like, it's basically like a just-in-time, make the schedule you're going to run, and then have cron watch for that or be prepared for that schedule. So that's essentially what was happening. But what happened in reality is that one of these two commands, I think it was the cron tab one, is it wants to run a specific, it keeps track of like a PID file, of a process ID file, and wanted to put it in a location that was only writable to root. So something like just /etc or something like that. I don't know. I don't remember. And the suggested device there was like, what could I do? I could make the etc directory like writable to my app user, or I could do a bunch of other things. And I tried these different permutations, but in the end, I was just like, I hit some other problem. Like, it's just not worth it. So what else could I do? Well, the thing that I couldn't do, or I chose not to do in Heroku, was have a separate worker, because in Heroku, separate worker meant more money, like 25% more cost. Now, it's not a ton when the app was like only $16 a month or something, but it was like an extra $5 to run another machine because it was going to be running all the time. But in this new setup, I'm running one machine, one DigitalOcean droplet, and it's whatever I can fit on that machine. So I now have the flexibility of saying, I want to run a web app, but I also want to run an actual worker process that's going to continuously be running. And that's what Huey is going to do for us here. So Huey is, maybe you've never heard of it. It is like a simpler version of Celery, which maybe you have heard of. So if we do Django Celery, and Celery is not specific to Django. Let's do Python Celery instead. I don't remember which of those. Okay, so here's Celery. Celery is a worker queue. The idea is your web application code can trigger things, get put onto a queue, and then the queue is just like a bucket of data that's sitting around. And then you have a worker somewhere that goes to the queue and says, are there any tasks that I can do? And it pulls the task down and does the work. And it's great for when you have things like you want your web requests to be super fast, right? You want to do, and a good way to do that is to do as little work as possible in the actual web server. Do just enough to serve the HTML data back to the user or whatever data you're trying to serve. You have an API, and then get right back to serving the next request. So the queue separates things and makes it so if you have something that is very heavy and time consuming, you can do it on a background worker when it's not going to impact your actual users, because they'll have already received the HTML and then know that, have some peace of mind that maybe there was something that was going to be done on their behalf, but it's going to be done slightly later, or maybe they don't even know because it can happen in seconds, but we still want it to be fast. So this is a popular reason why you would use Celery, but Celery is not the only game in town. In fact, if we go to awesome Django, hoping that there are more examples here of other tools. So if we find Celery on this list, yeah, you can see that we are not short on supply on task queues, although ironically, the one we're about to show tonight is not listed here. Oh, there it is. Why is it not? That's weird. Yes, Jeffrey, absolutely. A built-in task queue is overdue, and that is totally true, and that's one of the things in Rails 8. Rails 8 has, I think they call it solid queue or something like that. They have a whole like solid this, and it was like a branding thing. Solid this, solid that, and solid is one of those. And the other thing that I like about Rails 8 that I'm doing with this app, I've talked about it last week, is we're going to use SQLite. New apps that don't have tons and tons of traffic can get really far with SQLite, especially with some configuration. I'm not going to stream it this week. I saw a very interesting post on X from someone who did a bunch of optimization work to make Rails work really well with SQLite. The out-of-the-box SQLite is a great little database, and Python has a libsql already, like a SQL module that you can use out of the box, which is great. It's actually like a benefit over something like Go or other programming languages that don't come with SQLite embedded. But the one downside of SQLite is that its default, it's both good and bad. So the team behind SQLite, I want to say it's like 4 or 5 people, which is crazy. It's like the most used database on the planet, and it's developed by this ultra small team. But they have very, very extremely conservative stance on breaking changes, because there's like literally trillions of these databases out. They don't want to break stuff. So there are a bunch of good options that are available that are just not turned on, but they should be the default, but they are not the default for ways that we would want to use SQLite, especially for a web application. And the person that I found on X that did the optimization, he has a blog post on this as well. I'll try and find the link and maybe put an issue up on the journal app so that we can review that together later. But it's different pragmas that are these configuration options and different config stuff that was set in order to get a very high throughput out of SQLite for a single, actually references a DigitalOcean droplet. He reports that he can get 60,000 RPS out of that. That's requests per second. But his example was using Go. So I'm not hopeful for 60,000. I know that Django, specifically GUnicorn, is a lot slower than that. But if he's able to get 60,000 out of the database before it starts to fall over, then the database should never be our problem for this particular app. And that's what I would love for Django to have, is like a setup that is like really refined, just like Rails, and say like, you know what, don't worry about Postgres as your first database. You're starting up a project, just use SQLite. It's the same development that you get for or the same database you get for the development environment, use it for production too. It's fine. Another thing about it, and part of the reason why I'm using Huey over Celery, is Rails Solid Queue uses a separate SQLite database as the place to store queue state. And that is why I'm going to use Huey, because it has the same exact thing where you can configure it to use a SQLite database as the task runner. So let's actually go ahead and click it. So let me show what it looks like here. I think it's an older tool at this point. Maybe there's just not a lot to it. It uses like this. I don't know if you recognize this theme. This is like Python's old school theme back in the Python 2 days. And that's Jeffrey. That's a good question. I don't know about the result store versus broker store. They might be the same for this. I can't answer that. But I generally don't use task runners for a result store. My preference is to truly treat it as like async and fire and forget. And then if I really need some state, actually put the state that I care about in the database and query it later. I try not to block, but that's my philosophy anyway. So what are we going to do? We're going to use Huey. We're going to configure a worker, and then we're going to do this little maneuver right here. So wherever we had a cron task, there were a couple of them for the JourneyInbox, or there was a Django extension job. There's a couple jobs that we need to replace. We're going to replace it with a periodic task. So the worker will just be continuously running and ready to send out email. This actually opens up to a nice future where, well, I was just going to start worrying about cost more when we got into like sending emails based on different time zones, all of that sort of stuff. So I think to answer your question, Jeffrey, what I'm gonna be doing is cron stuff here, because that's what my app currently has. And then we can take advantage of actually doing, where's an example? This kind of stuff where they actually have tasks that get fired off dynamically by the app in the future. I just don't have any use cases right now for the app. So we're just trying to do like a shift from one technology stack to the other with this particular circumstance. But it does open up the possibility of doing more advanced stuff now that we'll actually have a worker process that's running. So I'm trying to think. Hold on. I want to check. Oh, am I migrating from Celery? No. So because Heroku has a scheduler, it's literally just a cron job. And I run, what do I run? So let's look. I think it's something like, I use Django extensions. And Django extensions has a run jobs thing. So it's this thing right here. So if we do run jobs, and you can say, so I believe what I did have something like run jobs daily. And then this would be effectively, I'm not using UV on the current Heroku setup, but it would be like /man or Python manage run jobs daily. And that's what I put in the scheduler. And then over here in the actual code area, we'll probably have a couple of jobs files. So there's one to expire trials, one to send email. So those are the two things that we have to migrate over. Maybe also clearing sessions. I don't know. That could be something we do too. So I could go about this in a couple ways. One way would be to not touch this and then just invoke the job as another job, but that gets a little weird. I think what I'll instead do is make this a native task thing. I think that's similar to what I have over here. Like as an example, I have an expire trials on this one too. So we can go to, oh, I also did I did the clear DB sessions. So we're gonna use that. I'll probably steal that one, frankly. And then you can see we have the expire trials thing here. So we'll do something like this. Yeah, there's not much to it. Probably steal a lot of this file, in fact. So let's get to this. We're gonna do, and there's some other changes we need to make. We will need, what will we need? We'll need to make sure that we update the actual proc file. So there's gonna be a worker that now needs to run as well. Not a very hard change either. I can show you what it looks like. So we have a worker, and I want to say that, I can't remember if it reloads automatically. So it might not be quite as flexible as some of the other stuff, but well, the other stuff was a cron job, so it will be infinitely more flexible because we weren't running anything on the other side. So, where to begin? First things first, we should get Huey. So uv add Huey. And I guess I should comment on, Jeffrey made a comment on the built-in task queue is overdue. There is a Django proposal, an enhancement proposal, the dep, to add essentially an interface. Like, you know, so many things in Django are interfaces to different kinds of schemes, and there is a PEP to add background task running as an interface. And part of that is the inclusion, I believe, of a database-backed interface. So Django is taking steps towards where Rails currently is, just maybe not at the pace that I would like, but I'll just choose to be patient. Which may obviate in the future a need for a Huey kind of package, but I'm happy that Huey exists now. Okay, so we've got Huey, and ooh, look at that. That is so slick. Not only is a Huey a great little package, it did not pull in any extra dependencies. Is that crazy? Is that true? Wow. Cool. It's a tight little package. So we will go start with the jobs. So we've got two different kinds of jobs, and we're going to replace this with a tasks thing. So we will come up here. We'll create a file which we're going to call tasks. I think, if I recall correctly, I needed to call it tasks because Huey does some particular discovery on inside of apps for anything called tasks. And I am drawing a blank on what we're gonna. There's some Huey setup config here too that we're gonna need to do. Nope, Huey. There it is. Yeah, here is all the Huey configuration that's going to be required. So you set effectively the broker that you want to use. That's what the Huey class is. They have database ones as well. And then because we're using the Huey broker, what's the file name where we're going to store this? So I'm creating a database directory in the future. So we'll get to this in a little bit. But I don't think we need this right away. I think we can actually do, well, we'll find out. I don't know. It might blow up without the settings. Okay. Jobs. Expire trials. So we're going to name ours expire trials, right? It might be faster. Let's do this. Let's take all this code. I think it will be faster to go over here and paste this and then fix it from the homeschool app. So we're going to take the body. Let's delete this version and take the body over here and replace it like this. Okay, and then we'll do LSP restart because I didn't know about Huey. And we need to have this stuff. Where are we? We're in the accounts app. Okay. So we can do constants And then we can also do from models import account and clean this up. We're already in here. Okay. Sweet. So what this is saying is like, hey, every day at midnight, so hello, welcome. We're working on migrating an app from Heroku. What's my webcam quality? I'm not sure how to answer that. Is it good? Bad? What's your opinion? It's I don't even remember what's the name. It's an Elgato camera I'm using. Oh, good. There's a particular like it's a fixed length, fixed focus camera, so I can't. It seems to work well enough for me. All right, so we have this now, and I think the thing that we need to do is there's a little all over the place, y'all. I apologize. Test tasks. So I've got a bunch of tests for the job version of this. And what I need to do effectively is copy over all the tests just like I did here, and instead call these functions. So that's the other nice part about this is if you want to just invoke it, you can just invoke it, which is cool. So there's probably a test jobs file here on the accounts. So we want all these tests. And so let's do this. We'll go yank from here to the bottom. And then we will go up and say, we'll create a new file called testtasks.py. And we will paste everything. This should still pass. It's like just another file. So I've literally duplicated tests at the moment. But then what we want to do is we're going to take out the job. And so let's drop the job and instead replace it. Because you can see I've replaced the body of this. So everything about this should still work. It's just like exactly as it is. I don't anticipate anything else being broken. So we will have this now becomes, what does it become? From journal, accounts, tasks, import, expired trials. And then for this stuff, we will change to expired trials. And we'll just do that here and here and here. And with any luck, cross my fingers, it all, oh, boo. Okay, all right. So we're missing the configuration. And its configuration is required. So it can't, it's trying to, I guess it defaults to want to run with Redis, which is a totally reasonable thing, or at least it was until Redis kind of blew up as a community. But we got to get that going. So first things first, let's go over here. Let's steal this Huey configuration. There's some stuff about immediate there. I frankly don't feel like talking about it that much. It's not very exciting. Just know that I needed to set that up for the other app. So we've got Django. All of these are Django things. I'm trying to do stuff alphabetically. So Huey is going to go after this, but before Sentry. Let's put this right here. And that would be that. If I did this right now, though, that would be the testing. The test files would go into the actual database, which we don't want. The other thing is that in the testing mode, we want immediate to be true. Okay, I feel like I do have to explain immediate. Immediate is the whole point of the background queue stuff. If you have immediate set to false, then it's going to decouple the call from the execution, right? Which is what you want. You want the worker doing the execution, and you want some call that like sets up and says basically enqueue this thing. But when you change it to immediate set to true, then effectively you run the task in process without actually submitting it off to a worker. So it's not where it fails from a testing perspective is then you're not testing the serialization of did my whatever I requested get sent to the worker properly, which you could debate that that's good or bad, or you could decide that that is actually a problem for Huey to figure out. Hopefully Huey just does the right thing. And you know, that's one perspective there. So Jeffrey, am I going to use Redis? That's not my plan. again, I'll come back to the Rails thing again. So what the insight I think that Rails had, I think that was very astute of them, was if you want to get set up faster, like minimize the number of dependencies that you need. That includes caching. So SQLite, again, partially because of new hard drive technology like NVMe, enables much better read-write performance from disk and stuff. So a tuned SQLite can actually be a very effective initial caching tool. Of course, Redis, being a purpose-built tool, is going to be better at that job. But if you use SQLite for that too, you can also get a lot more mileage. Just like the all-in-one stop shop. I didn't say that right, but the all-in-one place to go for a bunch, like all of your database, your background workers, your caching, like these things stack up. I think they even have it for like WebSockets too. So it's mind-blowing how much they've used it for, and they put it in one convenient package, and it makes it so that there's actually very little to set up to get going, which I think is just like lovely. So this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to use database dir here. Notice that I'm using path, which is cool. So whatever we set as DB directory will need to be a path later. But that's not going to be our testing configuration. So this was one that I had to go and have a different testing setting. So what you see about this particular Huey configurations, yes, we're still using SQLite, but for the actual test to run, we don't want to store the test results in a different thing. So we're using the in-memory. This is a special string that SQLite respects, so it's basically an in-memory version. And we're turning that immediate flag to true to run all this stuff in process. So we want this chunk of code, and we'll bring that over to our testing file over here. So if we do that, go here. And then if I'm alphabetical, I would put that right here, right? I'm not alphabetical though, but let some convention kind of emerge here. Got the media, whatever, it's fine. So now if we run our test again, it passes and is nice and snappy. And the benefit is we're basically done migrating that whole task. So we can go to this job and we can delete expire trials. We can actually delete this whole directory here. I'm going to do that over in a shell because I have this PyCache directory. I don't know what's in there. So this is accounts jobs. So let's remove rf journal accounts jobs. Okay, that's gone. So we've replaced jobs with tasks, and we're a step closer. Okay. The other thing that we have is it's the send mail one, right? That's the other job. So let's go ahead and add that to the stage so we give like a kind of a checkpoint. So logically anyway. Not committing it yet because I don't need to, but at least I can get the diff. So let's actually maybe do a quick review of that one diff. So the job goes away, got the new tasks file, takes all the new code, cleaned up the imports. I didn't really talk about the imports from Huey. So there was this, when I read the documentation, Huey suggests, or there's a contrib package that's in Huey, which is kind of cool. So they're aware of Django, essentially, or they design themselves to be. And there's some work, I don't know what it is, but they say to use this DB periodic task from this contrib package as a decorator versus a regular periodic task. I don't remember why. So I just followed the documentation there for that one. We've moved all the tests. I don't even want to check them. All we changed was job to expire trials. And then we've added the config in both places. What am I using Vim for? Because I don't know how well you can see it. I'm getting a lot more gray here. I've been using Vim for 20 years. I don't know. That's maybe not quite. 2006. So coming up on 20 years. It's just where I started, and I never left it. So there's no special reason for it. I have like changed my configuration over the years. So I started with VI and went to Vim, and then eventually now I'm on NeoVim, but Still Vim, because my fingers only know Vim key bindings at this point. Okay, let's move to the other job. So we've got the send mail job. Now, thankfully, we did a bunch of refactoring in this one, so this should be pretty nice cleanup as well. Let's go. Where's this? Oh, entries. So we want to go up. We will create tasks.py, and we will call this the most appropriate thing that I can think of, which is send mail. It's the same, literally the name of the thing. So this was a daily one. Did I run both those? The other one, shoot, sorry. Tasks. Did they run the same hour? Yeah. I ran them both at midnight. Oh, so you can certainly see my Vim config. It is all online. More than my Vim config. I've got my whole dot files set up that I clone and then symlink to the various locations. So if you want to see my Starship setup or Brew or ZSH, whatever, it's all in there. So enjoy. Okay, so we have, I want to put this, I guess, at the same time. So we're gonna, well, maybe I don't. When do I send mail currently? So this is the challenge with this is going to be the app is going to run in UTC. The difference is the homeschool app, the things that it was running as background tasks, the time didn't really matter that much. This one's a little different, and I might need to log into Heroku. The difference is currently when we send out the prompt emails, because again, if you've never joined before, this is a journaling service that works by sending out emails, and the user interacts with the site by replying to the email and stores all of the reply as an entry to your journal. The thing that we need to get right, though, is I want the prompt to be at roughly the same time for now. Since I've got it hard-coded to a single time, I don't want it to show up. Well, does it matter? Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe I shouldn't worry about it. Oh, I don't know if NVim is the new hype. I guess maybe it is. Giordano. Why am I having a hard time saying that? I'm so sorry. I do like NVim though. Okay, so we want to get this send mail task here. I think it's going to be okay for now to have it run at the same cron tab of midnight. That will be midnight UTC, which would, okay, this is maybe where it becomes a problem. I want it to show up for me on East Coast time in the US as on that day. And if I do it on midnight UTC, do I run into the problem where it might actually show up, like be sent out on the night before because UTC is whatever 5 hours ahead? Yeah, I think we got a problem there. So let's go into Heroku real quick, check on, and this is where I can show you the Heroku scheduler and how that's all configured, so you can understand what is actually translating to here, and then see what the new thing is. All right, I got to put on secrets to unlock my 1Password stuff. I just don't even feel like sharing. That's since it's like keys to the kingdom stuff. You know, I really don't want to do that. The other thing is I'm going to go to Heroku, the Heroku dashboard, and I apologize that you can't see anything at the moment. I promise I will be done with this as quickly as I can, but you should still be able to hear me. So I got to do my 2FA, hopefully for one of the last times ever. That would be nice. Maybe not. I've got to get some secrets out of here later. So I'm going to punch over to Heroku, and it gave me a 2FA code that I'm typing in now. It verified, and it's logging me in. I got to make sure it's not showing my email anywhere. Yeah, my email's all over the place here. We are in the dark. I promise we'll get out of here in a moment. Okay, so I can't. Yeah, I can't show this until I get to this actual scheduler, and then hopefully it will show not my email address, and then we'll get back to. Oh, what the? Come on, Heroku, you're failing. It's like sending me to a favicon link. So stupid. All right, finally, we are back. Okay, so you can see when I have scheduled this, you can see what it's running. So I guess Jeffrey, you had asked earlier what I'm running, and I kind of described it, but here it is. Literally, that's what I configured it. And so I can click this edit button, and it will pop up over here. Gotta get my little sticky note out of the way. So this is running at 1 p.m. UTC. 1 p.m. UTC. 1 p.m. UTC. Ah, okay. Yeah, that's important. And so my emails, I've got a bunch of them. Let's see if I can show one. All right. So, all right. Let me just bring one up because y'all don't need to see the rest of my emails. Although this is where the fixed camera stuff isn't going to work either. So here we are. And what time did this get sent to me? You won't be able to see this worth a darn. But there's an email. Yeah, this is the downside of fixed length cameras. It can't focus on something else. But that's sending to me at 8 a.m. Eastern time. I can probably get these tasks through the CLI. You're probably right. I never learned how to, so that's on me. So we want to do 8 a.m. Eastern time, but really, if the clock on my machine is going to be UTC already, I want this time. I want 1 p.m. UTC. So that's what we want. So when we've got our cron tab here, we're going to put, oh gosh, it's 24 hours, right? So it should be just 13. Anybody check me on that? Pretty sure it's 13. So we'll take all this stuff from the top. There's some of this we won't use, but that's okay. And then we'll do, yeah, I get it. LSPs get annoying. They're like, "Wait, you didn't use everything." I know, leave me alone. Send mail is what I called the name of the job, so we'll keep the name consistent. It doesn't take any parameters currently, so we'll do that and that. So, and then the hour we'll set to 13 to be UTC. I think then we can take this stuff here and paste it in the body as what we actually want to run. We still need the account. That's going to come from a different place. It's going to come from, let's do this. So the transmitter is going to be at the same directory level. We've now got the account. We don't have datetime. All right, everything got cleaned up. Great. So I think we are good. Let me close out of Heroku before it sends me somewhere crazy and I show you more of my email addresses or whatever. I mean, if you watch the stream long enough, you know my email address at this point, but I try not to show off too much if I can. I don't know. It's a lost cause. So, Jeffrey, does the feature take email replies to make the journal entry immediately or on a schedule? The idea is this, with this whole website, is it's meant to be like a daily journal. So you write whenever you want. In fact, well, I can't show you my inbox again, or I guess I can. So these, I don't know if you can see the color. The blue ones here, they're all from JourneyInbox. And my mode of generally journaling is I actually don't necessarily journal every day. I sometimes will when I'm feeling so inspired, but I will go through little bursts where I write down a lot during the week. And then, so I have a reflection time where I'm actually saying like, what did I do today? And I guess I haven't talked about the appeal of why I journal this way. I think something that keeps me coming back to using JourneyInbox. And also, this, to be really clear, this was a copy of another tool that I used for years that had reliability problems. But the premise behind it is each one of those prompt emails that gets sent out that I get in my inbox takes a random previous entry and shows it to me so that I can reflect and see, like, here's where I was. Like, this is what I did with my kids 8 years ago. And that's because I've literally been using this tool for a decade. So I've got this like long history of entries that I can pull from. But the way that I design this is that it parses out the date from some information that's in there. And when you respond, it doesn't matter. You could respond 2 months from now, and because it's doing some date parsing based on some information, it will put your entry on the date that it was intended for. So if it was for November 21st, you could respond on Christmas, and it would still put it in an entry for November 21st. So it's a daily journal. It's the intent, and the goal is to get people to get better about journaling and have some motivation to want to do that. So that's really what the product is. So we have this daily job. The downside of this daily job, as John's aware of, is that it only sends out one time a day, and I've biased it for me. So currently, it does mean that, you know, if you're in the U.S., it's not so bad. But if you're in a European country, it would be a time that might be a little weird for you. It might work fine. I don't know. I don't live in Europe, so I've never never experienced that. Eventually, we'll want to change it so that you could let's say you wanted it at 8 a.m. your time, then you could configure that. Yes, it's not configurable today, so it is something. It's on the list. I want to say, pretty confident it's on the list. It's one of the early things, I think. Yeah, there it is. Number 25. Make a user preference to pick the time zone for when your email is sent. So we'll get to it, but the core functionality is there today. So we have the task now. All of the body of this should be working just the same. There's really nothing we had to change about it. It's pretty encapsulated. So what I want to do next is I want to go to the test jobs for this, which is this file, and take all this code, and we will make a test tasks file and paste it in. Again, this should all run. It's literally just a copy, so it's 3 tests. We will go and find, the first thing we want to do is pull in the actual sendMail function. So that will be from journal entries tasks import send mail, and then on these spots that actually have the job, we will change this to send mail, like so, and we'll do that here and here. And if everything went according to plan, tests still run. Great. All right, so we're cooking. So now we can get rid of this whole jobs directory. We've moved this over to the new spot. It'll run at an appropriate time. We can rmrf the journal entries jobs directory. So we've got another task migrated over. All right, there's one more to migrate over. So every time you log into the site, you get a session. Session it gives you like on your browser, you get a cookie put there. But it's effectively how you know you're logged in or not. So the app doesn't even show you what your entries are in the UI right now. It will eventually, but if you're an authenticated user, it should show you that information. And the sessions are not stored in any cache. They too are stored in a database table, a sessions table. So periodically, if people are just browsing the internet, like I don't even think you have to be logged in. You can be unauthenticated and get a session. That table will fill up. So what Django suggests, and what we were formerly getting by running that the manual thing, Slantshine, welcome. What we were getting formerly from running UV, what did I say it was? UV run manage run jobs. That was it, right? from this, what it would do, you know what, let me just show it. Let's do .h. We'll show all the, we can get a list of the jobs. If we do -- list, now I've killed the other jobs, so there should only be one. So when you ran the daily thing, it would run which one would it be? I think it would be this one. This daily cleanup would run something that would clean out the sessions table. So if you had the sessions table and you were automatically running this daily thing, you were getting that for free, just as a side effect of running the daily run jobs. I won't be running that anymore, so I need to take care of that myself. So that's why over here, the one last task that I keep was this one where I'm doing a periodic task to clear database sessions. And I think with this one, we can steal this one directly. We don't need to do anything to modify this. So what I'm going to do is come over here and we'll go, I have a core app, I believe. Yep. So we'll go up and create a new file here, tasks.py. I didn't copy that right, I don't think. I did a yank instead of a copy, going different terminals. And I don't know how much of this I need to explain. I'll explain it short. We're running a periodic task. It's going to run at midnight of UTC every day. And the key thing here was, like, I initially tried to do, I call the Django command directly. There is a management command that will clear sessions. But I didn't want to do that. I didn't feel like, can't remember if that did a sub-process call or not. But what you can do instead is effectively call the underlying thing that it calls. So we get out the session engine, which is going to be a database engine, and it has access to a session store, and you run clear expired, and it deletes the extra rows in the table. So that's all there is to that part. Okay, so where are we now? Let's run make tests, see if we still have coverage, see if anything blows up in unexpected ways. And, oh, boo. What's there? Oh, I left the test jobs file. So we got to go get rid of the test jobs file in both of these places. So let's get rid of this one. Test jobs, goodbye. Test jobs over here, also goodbye. John, I'm looking at your message here. A link to the UV docs. It has a new way of UV for setting dependencies in the TOML file. Oh, I think you mentioned that to me last time, John. And I really got to figure out, like, there's got to be a way that I can say, hey, allow certain people to post links. I don't know how to do that. If anybody knows where YouTube can let me allow that, although I probably opened myself up to people dropping in nasty links. All right, let's run the test again, and then let's do a little detour. We've been going pretty hard on this migration stuff. Let's take a detour to look at some UV stuff, because that'll be fun. Oh, boo. What failed? Oh, we don't have a test for it. Oh, fully. Okay. So we've created this. I'm not actually going to test anything because I don't care. I'm just going to call it just so I can get the coverage. The other way I could do it is say no test coverage or something like that, but I'll just call it. It's fine, because at least calling it tells me that, you know, it's not blowing up. So we've got test tasks. Let's do test tasks. Pi. We'll do from journal core tasks import clear DB sessions, right? Was that it? Or was it? Yeah, that was the name. And then class test clear DB sessions. We'll call it test OK just to make sure that's okay. And I'll say it's a sandy check. And we'll call clear DB sessions. What? Oh. Why? Oh, man. Going too fast, too fast. Okay, no asserts, but it's fine. It will run it, and now we have coverage for that line, or those lines. All right, sweet. So I think that's it. Oh, no. One, I gotta button this up. So what do we need one more thing, or I think it's just one more thing. Let me do a quick search for Huey here, make sure we got everything. So we do need this. This is the one more thing I was thinking of. In the proc file that's gonna do like for local testing, we wanna be able to have the worker running. So the way that we're going to invoke this later is using we're using Django contrib. There's something else I'm missing. There's probably a settings thing here. Yep. Okay. So we're missing a settings import, and then I'll speak to this. Settings. We will put this in order right here. Okay. So what are we doing here? We added this worker, and we added run Huey. Run Huey is a new command that's available to us via this Huey contrib DJ Huey package. So if we run uv run, oh man, I'm gonna get really tired of that. Gotta find a shorter way to do that. uv run manage, then you can see here run Huey. And run Huey is the way that starts with the worker. It's the worker that's going to be listening for anything in the that's actually in the database that has actually tasks to run. It's going to be the thing that's actually doing the execution. So we're going to have to run that eventually as part of what we put into Kamal configuration. And when we're running locally, if we want that to happen, we need to have a worker that is actually sitting there and listening and processing. So notice that it added a SQLite file, so we got to also update the ignore here. So we have some SQLite stuff in here probably, but it's just for that mode. So let's do this. So we want to ignore all SQLite files, and then actually we're not going to get a journal. We're gonna use get a wall file. So I get a few files there, so I'm actually going to change this pattern to say like anything that looks like a SQLite database or any of its associated files, which we'll get to in our optimization section in a different week. Ignore that stuff. So now we should be able to run the local setup, and now we have a new Honcho starting up a new process, and check out what it's doing. So it says, hey, I've got a scheduler that's going to run every second. That's how the scheduler works. It kind of just wakes itself up and looks for things to run. There are periodic tasks here. Here are the periodic tasks that I found, which are the 3 things that we created. So there shouldn't be any shock. If we had other things, they're like actual tasks to find. There might be another list. I can't remember, but all looks good. So now we've got like a full setup that kind of mimics what I would be running on the real site. Okay. So we'll add all that, and we will go to here and say convert cron jobs to Huey worker. I love that the logo, I don't know if you saw it. This speaks to my childhood right here. I watched a lot of DuckTales as a kid. So Huey, although I guess somewhere here, this is the real Huey. So he's got the guy who wrote this it's his cat. Still kind of cute though. For number 269, can I do this? Does this still work? Yay! Okay. So that's ooh, we're getting, man, look at this. We're getting right down to it. Is that the right? It was the wrong number though. 239. Okay. So John's comment was on UV dependencies and search on the dependency group. Oh. Okay, so let's go to, I think I have Astral still up somewhere. dependencies. Local dependencies for develop. Oh, did they switch it? Oh. John, do you happen to know what version this came out in? Is this like brand new? The other thing we need to do, we can merge while we're waiting. We can merge pre-commit and get that nice bump on rough. Okay. All right, let's see what it says. Because it's definitely different from the way I was doing it before. So let's learn. See if we need to change things. So where are we? We are currently putting dependencies in project dependencies, right? So we're in the project table, the TOML lingo, I think. And then we have the dependencies, which is the list here. So that's what is talking about here. And then there's optional, and then there's dependency groups. That sounds like the new thing that John is referring to. So these can be used even if your project isn't going to be published. Dependency groups are a recently standardized feature. Recently standardized by what? Okay. Well, if this is the new way, let's go ahead and do it, because I don't want to be like, well, we're already here. So this is the same. And then that's the same. Cool. And then updating, sure. Platform dependencies, nothing there. Project dependencies are declared across two tables: tools and UV sources. I don't have UV sources. I've got this dev dependencies thing. That's the old way though. UV sources is for something else, like if you're like you have more complex needs. Project dependencies represents the dependencies that are used when uploading to PyPI or building wheel. Or if you're an app, I think it's just for app stuff, right? Keep going. Dependency sources, I think we're good there. It's like if you wanted to use a different index, that kind of stuff. Or if you want to install from a URL or path. All right. Cool. And then they've got this workspace feature, which I don't think we need for our stuff. Going really kind of fast with the scrolling, sorry. Okay, we've got optional dependencies. Is this the new thing, or is it farther? Well, there's a section on development dependency. We'll get there. Oh, optional is like, okay, no. That's when, yeah, we have like the bracket version, right? So I don't think we need optional. All right. Unlike optional dependencies, development dependencies are local only and will not be included in the project requirements when published to PyPI or other indexes. Okay, they're not in the project table. Yep. And we're using the dev flag. Yep, that's so good. So, oh, so I guess here's the new standard that they are adopting very quickly. What's the status of this thing? It's accepted. All right. It's not like a proposed thing that they put forward. It's legit. Can we just, I wonder if there was a command, it's probably not a command we can just use to change this, can we? All right, I'll just read. Sorry, y'all. We're using the dev flag. Dependency groups. Do I need to upgrade my version of UV? Because I don't actually know what version I'm using. UV version from Homebrew in September, a couple months ago. I really don't want to upgrade Homebrew. Huey. Well, it's a Rust package, so it's like a binary, so this should be okay. And I always forget, is it upgrade or update? I'm gonna get it wrong. Brew upgrade UV. Oh no. I don't want to, yeah, just give me, I was getting scared there. It started saying it's going to do Ruby. I'm like, what are you doing? Okay, UV version. Okay, much more recent from yesterday. I was hoping there'd be like is there some way to convert, or we just have to change this ourselves? It's fine. So we want to switch it to dependency groups, looks like. So we don't need the tool UV at all anymore. So we'll change this, change inside of here to dependency groups. And then we change this to dev. Is that it? If that's it, that's pretty easy. Looks like that's it. Well, I'll run it in a second. We'll see if we got it right. So it's got the special one, the dev group. Dev group is special cased. There is dev, only dev, no dev, which we have no dev. We use that in the Docker file. Go to the Docker file. We should find no dev here. That ensures that when we do a sync, we're not also pulling down dev packages. That's important that that stays that way. And I guess you can add other groups if you want. If you want to split this out, why would you do this? Can't think of a good reason to do that. But to each their own. And, interesting. You can have different. By default, UV includes the dev group in the environment. Yeah, that's all right. So we should, what I'm hearing basically, or what I'm reading is I should still be able to run this, which my make target there runs UV under the covers. And the fact that everything still ran, I think tells me that I'm good. Cool, that wasn't that hard. Thanks, John. Oh, here's the section. And I think they're just telling me to just change this. Okay, and they're saying they won't switch to the new thing. All right, we have switched. Great. Latest and greatest. We are on the cutting edge. I'll even reference the PEP. How about that? Use PEP. He's snooty. 735 dependency groups option. Table. Right? I did name it right. Dependency groups. Groups plural. Yep. Neat. Okay. What is left? Is like, this is where we need to figure out what's next. Well, how do I want to do this? I did some stuff with, I did a lot of this on the homeschool app. So there's part of me that says like, just pull in the Kamal configuration from the homeschool app rather than going from the like bootstrapping Kamal approach. Because I think that's where we are next. Is the next step is to actually start using the deployment tool. What I want to be careful of though is I don't want to deploy to the same IP, because I think this machine has the same SSH key on that IP address, and I would accidentally put the journal app on my homeschool app. That would be that'd be bad news. Yeah. So let's do this. Next thing to do is to start getting the Kamal directory. So we've kind of, I think we're done with like all the code changes for this migration. There might be, well, that's not totally true. There's a couple tweaks left related to setting or two, particularly around database stuff, but that'll come later. So I want to find, we're in the homeschool app right now. If I go to the Kamal directory, so we have all this stuff from the homeschool app that I need to bring over. And this is the part that's going to be like a real pain in the butt to do on stream, frankly. So I'm going to copy a bunch of this stuff over. Do I even have 1Password installed here? I don't. Okay. I guess I've only done this on other machines. So this is something that we'll need. So let's talk about this. Or no, let's copy. I'll copy the files over first, and then we can talk about this stuff. So we've got a .kamal directory that we're going to recursively copy over. The other thing that we need to copy over is this config directory. Those are the two directories that Kamal uses. Everything else is something specific to this project. So we'll go over here. Actually, we'll go to this middle one, and we'll do copy homeschool Kamal. Whoops, that's going to need to be a recursive copy because there are multiple files in there. And we'll go to the end, and then we'll say here, and that's going to put a Kamal directory here. We'll also want to do the copy for homeschool config, and we'll copy that here as well. So we've got these two new directories. I'm going to start by just adding them to the stage. So there's a bunch of files that we're not actually going to use primarily, but we do have as guidance. Hold on. I'm going to make sure there's no like missing config. Oh, good. Homeschool clone was at the latest. I had this fear that I was like way behind on that one, and that I was going to copy in some outdated configuration. So we've now got these setup files. Well, I'll march you through the different hooks that we have, the different files that are there, so you can see it all in one place. And then we'll start customizing it for the journal app. I don't know how far we'll get on this evening, because it's already a couple hours into the stream. So first, let's look at Kamal's directory. There are two major kind of sections of the Kamal directory. Let's begin with the hooks, because there's not as many of them. Kamal comes with a set of hooks that it will fire. So I think I kind of covered this last time, but essentially with Kamal, what you do is you set up your machine. In this case, it's going to be a DigitalOcean droplet. And you point a portion of the config file that we'll see in a little bit to the IP address of that machine. And the minimal part that's needed is that Kamal needs to be able to SSH into that machine. So you need to have an SSH key on whatever machine you're running from that can actually connect to the remote machine. That's the requirement. Once it does that, there's a bunch of steps that Kamal does to bootstrap, including the installation of the Docker daemon, if that is not available. So it installs Docker, because what we're doing, and I outlined this last time, is we're making an image of our application. We're pushing it up to a registry, and then our machine, we're going to SSH over to that machine, the production machine, and start issuing remote commands. So essentially, we're doing some like remote control of the machine. And those remote commands say things like, well, go to the registry and get the image, and then start this process over here, and a bunch of work. So all along that sequence of remote commands, there's a few hooks that you can use that can kind of interject behavior that you want to have while you're running. So one of those, a bunch of these you can see are listed as sample. Those came when you do essentially a command called Kamal init, I think, when you're first installing Kamal. So these are not things that I use. In fact, I am thinking I only use this one now. I was using another one for migrations, but I found out that it didn't work very well. So just using this Docker setup hook. And this is my local setup hook. And what it's doing here is it's adding the app group and the app user to the host machine. And it needs that there for one of the things about Docker is like we need to actually like take our database and have that accessible and stay on the host. So even if the Docker container goes away, that anything we've written to a database just persists. And the way to make that work is that the Docker container app user needs to match up with an app user on the host machine. And if those two things line up, which they do, and they do that via this 222 that I selected as the group ID and the app and the user ID. Actually, you can see that in the Docker file over here. Here's the symmetry. So this is why these numbers are specifically selected. I wanted things that didn't conflict with any other used group ID and user ID coming from the base Python image, and I just picked in that range. So that's this first portion of this thing. And this Docker setup script only runs one time. It only needs to run the one time. Very first time you go into the machine, and this is like the automated portion of this. The other thing that we're going to need is the actual place where we store the database data. I have that in the settings file as the db-dir. You can see that here. So here's where our Huey task database is going to go. Also, the actual SQLite database will go here ultimately. So we're going to create that directory and make sure it exists before we run anything else. And then we're going to make it accessible to the app user, because otherwise it would, all of the stuff would be owned by root, as you can see from who's issuing the commands. So that's the state we're in. I'm realizing my other app has a little bit more here. So if we had user-defined media that we needed to store on the host, which I have for another app, let me show you all that one. So this will actually be the third app that I've done a switch to DigitalOcean with. There's the little true secret there. The other one that I have is this community app that I built. So if you're interested, you can see what this site is. It's community.techfrederick. That's my local tech organization .org. And this is running a little Django app that pulls from Meetup and shows like event details and stuff like that. But this is all running on a DigitalOcean droplet powered by Django, deployed with Kamal. And the difference here is that this one actually has media files. So if we were to look at the code for the Kamal hook here and look at the Docker setup, you'll see that I also listed a var media directory. So if you were doing this yourself, and then you decided you wanted to have user uploads and be able to store those things, and you wanted to use not like Django storages and put stuff on S3, but you wanted to serve it straight from the machine, which is what I'm doing here. This is how you can go about doing that. You set this stuff so that it exists, and then you would point your settings to use this directory. Okay, so that's what this particular hook script is for. The other thing that's in here is the secrets. These are not, as you can see, actual secrets, but what they do is there's a secret step. So certain parts of the configuration, which I'll show in a moment, actually I can have them side by side, why not? There are things in here in this config file that are actually references, so things that we know would be secret information. So where it says password, it's not actually treating Kamal registry password as the password. Instead, that is a placeholder that looks to pull from whatever was defined in the secrets area. So here, what we're doing is we're saying set the secret as an environment variable, essentially, and pull that information. And I'm going to use 1Password to store all the secrets for this app, just like I do with the homeschool app, which I've called School Desk, because that's the name of the service. And the way the 1Password CLI works is you can give it a path to a secret, and so it'll prompt me to put in my 1Password credentials, and then I'll be able to go read from the vault that has all this configuration. And so the way that I've configured this for this file is for any secret that I had, I would put it into 1Password and pull it from one of these paths that is configured. And this is different from the Heroku setup. The Heroku setup is they give you a dashboard, like an admin dashboard, and you I unfortunately showed that on stream one time and had to rotate all of my secrets on this particular app. But it's essentially the key values of everything you want. So I will probably offline. I think it might be great to. If we have time. Nah, I don't think this would be a boring activity to end on. So we'll save it for when I'm feeling fresh. But what we're gonna do is put the secrets in that we actually need for JourneyInbox into this file here. And then what I will do off stream, because I really don't want to be messing with 1Password on the stream, is actually set these up so that all of these paths will resolve in the right way. And if there's a way I can find an example that I don't know. It's so dicey to be like, here's my 1Password stuff. Considering it's like the secrets for my whole life. So I probably won't do that on stream, if I'm just being honest with myself and y'all. But I can show you kind of conceptually where this is. This is like a vault, and this is actually I'll just describe it now. So you can create multiple vaults in 1Password. So I have a personal vault, and this is separate from my personal vault. And this particular vault has one secret or one config in it that is of a server credentials type, I think is what it's called. And when you open that, if you're ever using 1Password, it will show you like username, password as the default things that are there. But you can change those, like the username and password. You can override those names, and that's what I did with this AWS Access Key ID. So I created a config thing called server, and then I just populated it with a bunch of different additional entries, and I named the entries such that they matched the environment variable names. It was very clear of name, secret, name, secret, name, secret, name, secret. So that's all that's happening here. Nothing really crazy about that. So the combination of setting up this vault, setting up the server item in it, and then setting the actual values, plus wiring them together with this secrets file is what will then, when it's time to deploy, like pull that information together and be able to send it to the actual DigitalOcean droplet where the secrets need to live. So that's the secrets file. Okay, the symmetry of that, just so you can see it. So we've got the Kamal registry password here. That's one place. And then we have our environment here below. Any environment variable that does not need to be a secret is considered clear text. So I thought that was a really great name. And then you can see how this is done over here. Anything that is a secret is just a reference to something in this secrets file. So here we've got secret key, and over here secret key. And you can see how that works up. And so any of these will be exposed as an environment variable to the container itself. And Kamal will take care of doing all of that wiring. All right, so we've now covered the entirety of the Kamal directory. There's not really much else to go through there. Let's go through here. The very first thing I'm going to do is change these IP addresses so I don't accidentally do this. So we're going to do 123.123.123. Like I really just need something that's different so that I don't accidentally shoot myself in the foot and try and deploy to the same machine as my homeschool app. That would be disastrous because they actually even have the same database name. Oh man, I can't even imagine the damage that would do. So let's not. So the name of this is going to be, we'll just continue using the same as the repo name. We'll call it journal. I will host this as a public image, which will be different from my homeschool app. The homeschool app, I used a private image, but Docker Hub only allows for one private image. But I thought about it, and it's like, do I want to spend money? Like, I can just make it public. And what's the downside of that? It means that in theory, you could take my image and start your own version of JourneyInbox if you went through all the rigmarole, but then you'd be paying for a droplet somewhere. I don't know, whatever. If you want to steal from me as like a business and follow behind me, that's on you. I don't think anybody would be truly tempted to do that, but you know, people do all sorts of interesting things. So anyway, it's going to be a public image, and we're going to deploy the web worker. That's going to be our GUnicorn process, as well as the worker here. And the difference between these two is this is the primary, so it's going to use whatever's, so in that Docker file, it's going to use this command, the app bin server. That's where the gunicorn stuff is coming from. But for the worker itself, we want to override the command, and we want to run our own Huey thing here. So we're going to follow suit, and the managed py file will be here, and we already talked about run Huey earlier today. So that's that. The actual configuration will be not www.theschooldesk.app. It will be where this site lives, JourneyInbox.com. So we want JourneyInbox.com as our host name. And then we'll say that this is all that's needed in order to get Let's Encrypt going. So with one, setting the host name and setting this SSL to true, it will give Kamal enough information to go actually set up its proxy to get the TLS certificates that are needed. Finally, we have this health check modification here, where because migrations can take a little bit longer, I wanted to give the health check plenty of time to run. So that's why it's at a timeout of 60 seconds. The Kamal registry password we will set, but it's going to be the same thing. All right, so since I'm doing this on stream, we will need to do multiple architectures. So let's go to the Kamal documentation for a minute. And the reason we need to do multiple is that if I want to test the image on this machine, which is an M2 Mac, it is not an AMD 64. We have to have we have to build two images, which is a little annoying, but hey, that's what it is. So if we go down to this section, what section is it? Builder. And there should be an example of architectures. So you can list them put it as a list. We can do ARM 64 and AMD 64. So let's change this to be like that. And ARM, put ARM here. Okay. So those are the two values that we'll need. We'll do two images. A lot of this stuff in the clear is going to stay. In fact, I've left notes about it, about why I had them configured that way. This is where our database is going to live. We want to ensure that we never accidentally ship with debug on, so I've explicitly set it to false, even though it is also set to false. It's just like a paranoid thing at that point. And then we want our logs to show up, so we set Python unbuffered to 1. This secrets section is something that we will be checking next time when we update the secrets file. And then finally, we have the aliases here that I'll use. That's a way to get into the actual machine. So previously, with the older version of Kamal, you'd have to run Kamal app exec interactive reuse bash anytime you wanted to actually get into an app container to like poke around with the management command. So Kamal 2 added the ability to define an alias, so I can now say Kamal shell, and it'll do the same thing. Excuse me. Finally, the way all this magic works for having SQLite write to the host operating system is that we need to do a volume mount. And the volume mount says, hey, this database directory that's inside of the container matches up with this directory outside of the container, and we've linked it so that it's writable. So anything that gets written into the container also gets written to the real host operating system. So this is how our data is actually going to be stored. So this is imperative, otherwise this won't work. So that's actually the entirety of the Kamal configuration. Not too much. Hopefully it's pretty straightforward. And I think that's where I want to end it. Next time, what are we going to do? We still have a bunch of things that are we have to finish setting up Kamal. I'll do some amount of this offline so that all of these parameters should be there. If not, I'll be bouncing back and forth with the secret screen, the black screen that y'all saw earlier. So that'll be that. And then I think we're finally ready to actually, we'll see. Well, let me just write it down. Don't list this off in your head, Matt. What do we need? We need to have create a Docker registry project for JourneyInbox journal. I'll just call it. So that's necessary because without that, the new droplet won't matter. Then, speaking of droplets, we need to create a droplet that will host the app. So that process should be pretty easy. We need to do a little bit of hardening on the droplet itself. I don't want to leave the front door unlocked on the droplet, so we'll change some stuff to make sure SSH will only work for a set of SSH keys. That'll be important, and I think then that's pretty good. What else is there? So we need to. So then we start to think about like the actual migration of data. So there's a point at which there's some sequence of events here that I need to rehearse to get right. And that is to get a data dump, transform the data from Postgres to SQLite, and upload to the host. Upload to the host. In theory, if all of that is done, then I think that's the entirety of the migration. And that's like the last step. And that's something we might want to rehearse before, because there's well, I guess there's a little bit more here. And I had a whole script for the homeschool app that I might want to follow. In fact, do I still have that? Do I still have that documentation? Is there anything I'm forgetting? I think I put it right in the README. Maybe I deleted it already. Oh, come on. Did I delete it? Well, here's the hardening stuff that we'll do. I must have deleted the rest. We might be able to refer to the homeschool app briefly. I bet the old PR or something has it. Post-migration teardown. Maybe I took it out of here. Oh, that's an issue. I wonder I couldn't find it. I had a bunch of issues that I created. And then here it is. Here's cloud migration. Here's the big chunk. In the README? There it is. Okay. Cool. So let me reference this. Because what I want to do, like, migrating stuff can be a little stressful, even especially if I'm doing it live on stream. I really don't want to make a bunch of mistakes. So checklists are actually pretty useful, not only for checking off work that you see here, but making sure you don't miss anything. So I'm going to reference that, and in that README, there was a whole sequence of steps that I did that kind of walk through step by step of everything that I had to do for domain name stuff and all of that, because yeah, there's a bunch to do on this. Although this one I also did, like, this was migrating to a different subdomain. Oh, I think I was more complex with that. We'll see how much of that we can review that. So that's the plan. That's where we will go with this. So this is where the migration journey will lead us before we're actually ready to tear down the Heroku stuff. So that's the path that we're on. Oh yeah, I will definitely update the homeschool stuff at some point to use the dependencies group. I have a feeling also that UV will eventually start being like, hey, you should change this. Not yet, perhaps, since it's so new, but eventually I would think if they're doing it right, that they're going to have some kind of deprecation notice. Okay, cool. hopefully this was informative to you. This is the journey of migrating is not a quick and easy thing, but it's still fun to explore all these different aspects along the way. Hopefully you'll learn something about Huey and how that all works. And I will catch you next time. If you would do me a favor, leave me a thumbs up on the stream. That would really help other people find the content. And if you want to keep in touch with me, there's a bunch of other ways. MattLehman.com is a place where you can check out stuff that I write. I've not been doing a lot of writing this year, but I also have a book. If you want to support, that's all about Django. If you want to learn about Django, you can support me that way, or you can just read it online for free. I make that available. But if you like what you see, you might enjoy that. What else? There's like, you could subscribe here on YouTube or be a patron on Patreon. That's patreon.com/mblehman. There's a bunch of ways you can support me financially if you're so inclined. At the same time, I'm, whatever. I understand that people don't necessarily feel a need to do that, so I'll leave that choice to be yours. I would be much happier if you, well, not much happier. Give me money whatever way you want to. But if you want to get some value for value kind of perspective, you're welcome to try out JourneyInbox and get that email experience that we're talking about. And hopefully you enjoy it. If you do, the sign up, the service is, I think it's like what, 5 days of $5 a month or something like that. And wow, I gotta put some pricing on here. That is terrible, Matt. Okay. I cannot sign off with that. Really? No pricing information anywhere? Gosh, I'm terrible at this stuff sometimes. Where's the pricing info? Dummy? I'll leave off the dummy part. Okay. Sorry, I couldn't let that one stand. I won't be streaming next week. Next week is Thanksgiving, so well, at least is in the United States here. So I will be with family elsewhere. But after that, I should be back the week following. So thank you all for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Take care.